Welcome to Product Led Growth Leaders. We've got a really cool guest on the show today. She's a designer, and that departs from most of the guests that I bring on the show. Most people are product owners, or it's going to be a wave of salespeople. But we've got Alison Ostendorf. She is a fellow product designer like myself. She's been a product lead, a product director, a executive, a chief product officer. So leading products, but from the design perspective. She's got lots of work experience working in the Bay Area. And she also consults. So Alison, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Thomas. Happy to be here.
Awesome. So let's start off with talking about PLG. So I remember when the term PLG first came around, some people use it more than others, and a lot of people have been doing it longer than it's been a term. But for the audience, product-led growth, and this came from, instead of sales-led growth and paying a whole staff of salespeople to push your product to people, why don't we actually just make the product good enough where people actually want to use it? And so there's lots of familiar things out there. Slack is one of them. Notion is another. Airtable is another one that's brought up in meetings, in conferences as products that are, or companies that are led by their product. Alison, would you like to opine on that as a starter for product-led growth? What should people think about when they want their product to lead itself rather than having to sell it?
Yeah. So product-led growth to me, it was a really confusing term when I first heard about it because I thought, what else is there? But of course, I'm incredibly biased as a product designer who loves working on products and doesn't really have a natural talent for sales. So it also reminds me of human-centered design in a way, the term, because it's also, is there any other way to do it? Essentially, you make the honey really important and desirable, and people will come and try to get your honey instead of telling them, hey, you should work on this product, you should love this product, come love this product, please love this product.
Yeah, it's in when I just went out to the conference, Product Led Go to Market out in San Francisco. What I noticed in some of those folks from that will be guests on the show. But what I noticed is that it came from lots of sales executives out there. And it was interesting because it was a different spin on what I learned PLG to be in the beginning, which was that they were viewing product to be one of the many sales pipelines that we get some of our clients through email and some of them through phone and some of them through product. and so they're using it as a sort of a revenue model, and is interesting to see that come together from the sales profession and the other professions. What would you say? I know that you've got as part of your repertoire design ops.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that a little bit, because anything with ops in it, I think you're making it like a system, or you're making it systematic and operational. But describe that for the audience. What is design
Yeah.
ops?
So DesignOps uses fun keywords like product-led growth and human-centered design, but basically it's creating the systems that your design team needs to ask the right questions so they can build the right products based on talking to its potential users and seeing what they actually might need, rather than just creating something that the founder thought would be fun to create.
Is that related to, does that plug into research ops in your mind?
What good product is made without research? Yeah.
Correct. So tell me a little bit about, from your experience, especially in the Bay Area, when you have innovative teams, because I think when people think about startups and they think about a romanticized view
Yeah.
of what a startup is, and they think of the very super innovative, fun environment. What's your impression on what should be the sort of environment that a team who's creating a great product should be like? And what are some of the things that a leader can do to feed into that and enable that?
Yeah. I feel like a lot of my role as a leader of design teams is helping the team think more about the why and really getting to why are we doing this, which often involves talking to product managers about what the why is and asking them, how'd you get to this conclusion? How did you decide that these are actually the requirements? Are they actually required? Why are they required? Which a lot of other team members don't enjoy because they feel like they own the work. They already did that part of the process and they just want to tell you, please make this pretty. So it is a lot of empowering the team to go ask the right questions and get to the depth of something that's actually causal to the rest of the people who supposedly have the answer. They don't have the answer. Go ask the users.
Now, you've actually been in charge of the strategy side of things, right? So tell me what that's like for companies that are thinking about putting someone with a design background in charge of strategy rather than maybe an SME or a different kind of professional. What are some of the differences that you see in that and putting a designer in charge of that?
Yeah.
And is there anything that's missing?
In putting a designer in charge of that.
Yeah, and putting a designer in charge rather than the obvious other choices.
Yeah. So let's think about those terms as in their ways of thinking rather than that they are separate people in a team. A subject matter expert knows a lot about the subject matter. That could also be the person who is thinking innovatively and creatively and asking why questions. If the subject matter expert is there to say, this is how it works now, that's wonderful. You have a human encyclopedia who can more quickly get you, hopefully, the answers to the why questions that you're asking. But it's also unlikely that they are trained or they have the know-how to ask those deep why questions. If you're going to
Mm-hmm.
really innovate, you have to throw away some conventions, and subject matter experts tend to know a lot about the conventions. Usually it's a different mentality.
And I've actually seen it work quite well in some companies in Houston where there's been actual straight up product owners who
Mhm.
used to be actual designers. And I saw where they filled in those gaps better. They had a holistic. I think there's a lot of folks from the other side who make terrific product owners, but I've seen some interesting benefits from that. And so as a designer, what do you use as your North Star for how to do strategy in the first place? So I know as a designer, when I started getting really into strategy, it was hard to discover it. There were some books here and there that I'd read about trying to do business in an innovative way, but it
Yeah.
didn't seem as easy to find for me as how do you do research? How do you do design? How to do strategy as an innovator? Did you manage to? So, like, one of the examples is like Blue Ocean, where they reduce everything down to a strategic decision, and you judge the innovativeness not by what company's doing it like Apple or what industry's doing it like software, but what was the strategic decision that was made at a certain point in history. And I don't know if do you have any thoughts on that?
How to do strategy or how to teach strategy. That may be the hardest part of trying to grow someone from a junior or a mid to a senior who can really think on their own and help contribute to the roadmap.
How did you handle it?
It's a lot of coaching in the beginning and letting them show you their thinking. Often, a junior designer will listen to a product manager and say, okay, these are the requirements. I have to put a box here and put a button in it. And you say, okay, what do you think the box is for that the product manager was mentioning? And they eventually show that they don't know. So then we say, okay, why don't you go back to the person who told you it needs to be a box and figure out what they meant by box. They meant an area on the screen where this can be specialized. Oh, why does it need to be specialized? Because they think that this is important. Why do they think that's important? And you just go back and back until something is causal and is actually enough to then brainstorm around and be creative around itself rather than the result that was suggested.
So are you so in your mind is the why is this sort of simple why methodology is that does that get you to good decisions? And it's challenging the requirements, is that correct? So the person
Yeah.
who's doing in that strategy position has a proposal, and how do you execute this why thing? So you ask why and why until you get to what something that is makes the most sense or is core to the product
Mhm.
or is consequential in some way in a market sense. How do you
Yeah.
think about that?
So if I put a ball on a flat surface and the goal is that it needs to go to a different location. There are many ways for it to go to a different location. You can blow on it, you can push it, you can threaten it until it decides to move. You can do a lot of things. Getting to the why of something, when you actually get there, the why is the thing that will push it in a certain direction, meaning it can't go any other direction. So it's not a why until it causes that movement. And then you just keep following that movement.
Okay, so is one way of thinking about that is it's a real reason where the other things are not real reasons?
You could say that, but a lot of people don't like hearing that
Okay.
their feedback is not a real reason. I've actually said that to a lot of people and gotten angry at me.
Now, do you have any specific stories about a strategic decision that when you went one way versus the other made a difference? Because when I think about those fork in the road situations where a product could either go in one direction or another, you've got people in the room who feel differently
Mhm.
about what should happen with this product. And there's a lot of risk on the line. And I think that's one of the things that I've felt in my career that people don't necessarily feel comfortable putting a risky decision in the eyes of what they view as a designer or a creative, and they don't think that's for you. But in terms of, do you have anything in your memory of when you think, yes, this is a time that we went in direction A versus B or B versus A,
Yeah.
and and it ended up being the right decision?
Yeah. At one of my previous roles where I was director of design at Poly, a fintech startup in San Francisco, we had built several products and they were doing pretty well. We were faced with adding another feature into the dominant product. So we were trying to figure out if we should add the feature inside the product itself or spread it across the whole suite of products that had been developed. And that was a very strategic decision. It was also a user experience decision. It involved how do we sell the product? How do we price the product? Do we price this twice in each product or once for the whole platform? What if some user decides to only get one of the products and we've made it into a platform product? Can they still access this platform concept? So it was a lot of different architecture levels and thinking. The thoughts had been floating around that the value of the platform was the unique thing in the industry, and that no one had really collected data from product one to two to three and made it into a whole story that was the true data of what the experience was meant to be. When we had clarified that was the unique value in the industry, that was our brand, it made complete sense that this was a platform level choice. And it had to go in a way that was accessible in each product, but was meant to be distributed across the whole platform, which meant that you don't have to click into one product and then another page and then another nested page to go see it. It is dominant, it is prevalent, it is there when you sign in, it is part of the brand identity of the whole company. And it was easier to
Yeah.
enroll salespeople that way. It was easier to enroll marketing and kind of all the different categories that had been maybe siloed were able to then opt in to that one idea of a unified concept and then implement a cohesive strategy such that people wanted to buy the whole platform. People understood it was a platform. They understood that it was unique. It really spread into the whole company and culture.
Yeah, that's really good. And it's the small things end up being big things sometimes when we think about the products that we love. A lot of times it's those momentary interactions. So here's one thing. If what is your advice to a startup, a small startup executive who says, "Hey, I want to make my product more competitive. I don't yet have UX team yet or UX involvement. What should they do to build a UX team?" And you've built UX teams. What should they do to put that together? What roles are important? Why are they important? How should they think about that stuff?
Yeah. Before you asked how to build a UX team, my first question is why do they want to be competitive? You could say that the goal of business is to earn revenue, but if that's true, you can just make money by robbing a bank or by working on Wall Street or doing something that would make more money somehow. Why this? And why is being competitive important? Why not just have 100 people who love you? That's not very competitive, but it is devoted. What is really the goal in the company? Once you know that you want to be competitive and what that means, how that's measured, then you can recruit a team who also believes in that specific vision. You're going to recruit a different UX leader or design leader if you want to be devoted in how you bring on your customers and your revenue than you are if you want to be competitive. Someone who's working on a competitive design is going to say, I think we need to challenge the status quo. I think we need to create all these new features and be pretty ambitious with how we go out into the market. And I don't care that no one is doing what we're doing because we're competitive.
And this is what great design is all about. I want the audience to notice there's a recurring theme in a lot of these, which is that you take a step back and figure out why you're doing it. I think all too often we start from where we're standing and then just say, I want to do X. But sometimes you have to ask, what is it I'm actually trying to achieve? And you get a better answer. Simon Sinek famously outlined that with his why paradigm.
I love that book. I'm so glad that he stood for it. It's the most critical thing to think about whenever we make any kind of important or strategic or resource-based choice. Why are we doing this?
Absolutely. In your mind, how does data analytics play a role in the shaping of a product? I've known some executives that I think thought it maybe could replace usability research, and some fit it in different ways. And we're all familiar with what web analytics is, but have you seen in sort of your design ops work and working on things in quite like director and strategic level, how does that come together for you in your practice?
Yeah. There are lots of great tools that promise to give insights, which is an interesting word because it's really a result of data. And an insight is something that results from the context and the human awareness of the why that is supplemented by the data. But when I was learning to code and when I was learning to design and all these things, I was told, make data-driven decisions, be a data-driven designer. Everything's about the data. And I do believe that theoretically, but every designer that I talk to would say a lot of qualitative things. They would say, yeah, I know I should do more research, but really I met with the users and I learned this key insight. Okay, is that considered data? Is that at scale enough? What does it really mean practically to be data driven rather than just shaming designers for not having 1,000 users that they tested 2 designs on? So however is achievable within the actual scale of the team, within the time allowed and all of those constraints to get feedback. I think that's the way to go when you're developing a new feature. Ideally, you have dynamic heat maps. Ideally, you have A/B testing. Ideally, you have all of this stuff, but sometimes you can't and you still have to make some kind of data-driven choice. Do what you can.
That's excellent. So as we approach the end of our conversation with design philosopher, if I may, Alison
I like it.
Ostendorf. Yeah. And so I'm a quotes person.
Yeah.
I love good quotes. I think quotes have a great way of encapsulating ideas and allowing us to approach things in a clean way from a different angle. And so you have a quote that's really good that we got to hear in a presentation that you gave out here in Houston a couple of months ago. Would you mind telling us the quote and why is it important for us to think of it that way?
What the why? Okay, that was a wonderful moment. So the quote is after asking the room a bunch of questions about what is design and people giving a variety of answers, my only way to consistently think about it that feels in integrity is that design is the intentional creation of a product. But really what I'm focusing on is intentional creation. What is the
Yeah,
actual
yeah. Wait, no, wait a minute. Because the quote, as I remember, and maybe because quotes stick to me,
Yes.
is design is the intentionality
Ah,
during the act of creation.
you have my presentation more
Yes.
memorized than I do.
Yeah.
I'm looking at it
This
now.
is
You're right.
for all the listeners. This is Allison's quote, not mine. But
Yes.
I just said it. But
I'm looking at my presentation now. Thank you for quoting me accurately. I
but no,
actually have
please say it so it can be clipped. The audio can be clipped using your voice.
design is something like the intentionality during the act of creation.
Gotcha. I like that. I think that's really important because it implies a bunch of things in it. There's a bunch of implications wrapped up in it.
Yeah. Yeah, I've thought about that for a while. And I think the intentionality part of it is what sticks out to me most, and it's the word that I end up remembering from it, because what I hear often is, oh, we don't need a designer yet. Or, oh, yeah, we're fine. We have a product kind of figured out. We have an engineering team. I don't know if we should hire a designer. Okay, do you want to intentionally create your product or do you want to just passively let it become whatever lack of process makes it into?
Absolutely. Allison, where can people find you?
AlisonOstendorf.com. That's Alison with one L. And currently, I am managing partner at the Red Lion Agency. We're a marketing and design firm. We do holistic consulting on a variety of projects, anything that really needs to be digital and needs intentional creation.
Love it. Alison, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you so much for quoting me accurately. It was a pleasure to be here.